Start, Prakash.
Sure, Binduji. Let's start. Everyone, to Advaita Vedanta Satsang House. The ongoing sessions offered by Binduji, Bhagavad Gita with an Advaitic lens. We are on class number 28. The replays of all these 27 rooms are available either as a replay in Clubhouse, or I have posted 3 links on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Where you can listen to all the previous lectures, including Bhagavad Gita. I'll be turning off the chat and hand raising when Binduji is conducting the class, after which come up and ask questions after the class. So with that, over to you, Binduji.
Thank you, Prakash. Namaste, everyone. Let me do my invocation. Om Namo Brahma Dibhyo Brahma Vidya Sampradaya Kartrubhyo Vamshrishibhyo Mahadbhyo Namo Gurubhyaha Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashikritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murtibera Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Bhagavad Gita Dhyana Shlokam. Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Punvanti Divyaistavai Vedai Sangapadakamo Panishadai Gayanti Yam Samaga Dhyanavastita Tadgatena Manasa Pasyanti Yam Yogino Yasyantam Na Vidussura Suragana Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha. Oh, because you are not on mute. So yesterday we discussed about Yoga Karma Kaushalam. That is the dexterity or the skillfulness in karma is yoga. So what type of skillfulness is expected in karma? That is what was explained in the previous verses, starting from Sukha-dukkhe samikritva labha-labho jaya-jayo. That shloka onwards. Krishna has been telling that the equanimity. So he also said samatvam yoga uchade, means the equipoise is also yoga. So not only skillfulness, the equipoise which we have to maintain in our approach towards actions. Both are essential for karma yoga, which will take us to the purity of mind and the knowledge. Now, I started this verse yesterday, but then will be reiterate again. Karmajam buddhi yukta hi phalam tyaktva manishinaha janma bandha vinirmuktaha padam gacchandi anamayam. Karmajam, born out of actions. Buddhi yukta, engaged with the discriminative intellect. He is an abhyam, certainly. Phalam tyaktva, when you give up the results of the action. Manishinaha Janma Bandha Vinirmukta. Manishinaha means the great sages. Manishi means a sage of great intellect or great knowledge, great wisdom. Janma Bandha means the bondages of the empirical world, like birth, death, growing, decay, disease, etc. Vinirmuktaha means totally liberated. They got totally liberated from the bondage of empirical world by giving up the results and actively engaging in the action with the buddhi yukta, means with the discriminative intellect. Padam gacchandi anamayam. Padam means the status or the outcome. Anamayam gacchandi. Anamayam. Amayam means miseries. Anamayam means without miseries. So not only they are freed from the bondages of birth and death, they are also freed from the miseries. And gacchandi means they reach. So these are the word meanings. And the translation will read like this. Because those who are devoted to wisdom, they become men of enlightenment by giving up fruits of actions and reach a state beyond miseries by having become freed from the bondage of birth and death. Karmajam phalam tyaktva iti vyavahitena sambandha. So Shankaracharya states that this portion, the karmajam phalam tyaktva, we're starting from this verse, is to be connected with the passage which is given 2 verses above. He'll come to that later, but he is explaining this continuously now. Ishta anishta deha prapti karmajam phalam. Ishta anishta, desirable or undesirable. Deha prapti means body, attainment of the body. Karmajam phalam is born out of the karmas. So karmebhyaha jatam, karma phalam. So the attainment of desirable or undesirable body is a fruit of action arising from the desired driven actions which we undertake in our day-to-day life. Buddhi yuktaha samatva buddhi yukta sandahi. So the word buddhi yukta, he is making it as samatva buddhi yuktaha sandahi. Those who are endowed with intelligence which is equanimous in understanding. Indeed, yasmat phalam tektva parityajya manishinaha jnaninaha bhutva janma bandha vinirmuktaha. So, having abandoned the fruit or having renounced the fruit, they become wise, become the knowers, and thereby being freed from the bondage of birth. For birth itself is a bondage. Janma eva bandha. Janma bandha. Tena vinirmuktaha jivantaha eva janma bandhat vinirmuktaha. So freed from that bondage of birth, etc., even while living. That is a very important aspect. Even while living means here and now, this very moment when you do that. And they are freed from the bondage of birth, etc. Padam param avishnoho moksha akyam gacchandi anamayam sarva upadrava rahitam ityartaha. They attain the abode of Vishnu or Param Padam Param Avyayam. I mean, Vishnoho Paramam Padam is the word in the shloka. Here, the word Vishnu is not the Vishnu of the Puranas. We have to understand what is the word Vishnu here means. If you remember the Vishnu Sahasranama, Vishwam Vishnu Vashatkara Bhuta Bhavya Bhavat Prabhuhu. That is the first Sahasranama, first sloka. Vishwam means they reach the supreme abode of Vishnu means Vishwam only. They are having a equanimity for everything in this empirical world. So the world has no limitation on them. That is the meaning we have to take here. So that wherever they are, in whatever condition they are, and whatever time they are, for them, one place to another place doesn't make any difference. They are always engrossed in their own happiness, that happiness from the Atma Jnana, that knowledge of the self, which is called the liberation, moksha. Moksha Akyam, that is the name of that state. So Vishnu Padam Paramam Padam is moksha, what is being to be understood here. That Mukta Avastha is the Paramam Padam, which is free from all afflictions. Ityartaha. This is the meaning. Sarva Upadravarehitam. Sarva Upadravarehitam, we have to decode it as Adi Daiviga, Adi Baudiga, Adhyatma. All the three Upadravas. Upadrava means afflictions. All the three type of afflictions. Internal, that is Adhyatma, and Adi Bautika, from all the creations which is there in the empirical world, and Adi Daivika, which is the divine powers which is beyond cognition, which affect us. They all bring afflictions to us, one form or another. So when we are saying that Anamaya Rahitam, Upadrava Rahitam, means these afflictions are untouchable. From the point of view of a jnani, or the one who has realized, where Samatva Buddhi, who you have attained Samatva Yuddhi. Samatvam Yoga Uchyate, that yogi who has attained the Samatvam, he attained the Samatvam, or he attained the equanimity or the equilibrium by Karmasu Kaushalam, by being skillful in action. That skillful in action is that he has used the intelligence for an equanimous understanding, and he has abandoned the fruits of action because he has surrendered them to the divinity within himself. Thereby, he has made sure that the actions are self-consuming and do not produce a result, and thereby a chain of action and reaction is triggered. Athava, this is where he is linking it to 249. Buddhi Yoga Dhananjaya iti arabhya paramartha darshana lakshana eva sarvataha sampluta utagaye sthaniyaha karma yogaja sattva suddhi janita buddhihi darshita sakshat sukruta dushkruta prahana adi hetutva shravanat. If we are linking this to the previous verse, that 49th verse, beginning in the statement where he says, Buddhi Yoga Dhananjaya, by the yoga of intelligence, O Dhananjaya, he has mentioned this Krishna. That very intelligence characterized by the vision of the supreme reality. iti arabhya paramartha darshana lakshana eva sarvata sampluta utake sthaniya, which is like the water flooding everywhere. So you are not making any difference in the water in a flood situation. Whether there are ponds or lakes in between, everything gets inundated under the flood. Same way, a person who is characterized by the intelligence or by the vision of the supreme reality, he doesn't see anything separate from the reality. He doesn't hear anything separate from the reality. He doesn't know anything other than the reality. So it is as good as a flooding of Sampluta Utage, like the flooding of the water, which inundates all smaller ones. Same way, the knowledge of the supreme reality inundates the separation between the knower and the known. Therefore, there is no separate knower and known for us. And this is born of the purification of the sattva produced by karma yoga. The end result of karma yoga is jnana. But karma yoga by itself is in duality. So as directly indicated in the teaching, that is where the Samplatotake, that inundation of the water, that can happen only when one is abandoning the merit and demerit of actions. As long as we hold it to duality, this unification or the Ekatva Darshanam, Paramartha Darshanam, the knowing of the reality cannot take place. So, how the renunciation of results culminates in the liberation? That is what is the sum total of this verse. So what is the karmaja phala? The fruits born out of karma. The fruit of action is not merely pleasure or pain. It is the embodiment itself. The pleasure and pain will trigger a desire in us to aggrandize things which can add pleasure and avoid what is causing pain. So therefore, we will develop a ishta anishta deha prapti. Such a body embodiment we will prefer where we have perpetual happiness. But as long as one claims the results, it is indirectly that he is claiming the birth, either a punya birth or a papa birth. Only when we renounce the results, there we are breaking the chain, thereby renouncing the rebirth and not merely renouncing the enjoyment or suffering. The word tyaktva is indicating of the renunciation, but not an absenteeism. See, the word tyaktva means rejection. The literal meaning of the word tyaktva means having rejected. Here, it is not a rejection of a thing which is coming to us. We have no control of what will come to us or what will not come to us. Every action has got its own reaction. No action is without consequences. So the consequences will appear. Abandoning a fruit of action does not mean refusing what comes or physically distancing or discarding the outcomes. But it means dropping the sense of entitlement and relinquishing the doer-enjoyer's claim that it is my right to enjoy because it is an action done by me. And this renunciation, which has been referred here as Tyaktva, ripens the buddhi to be ready for that jnana. And when that jnana is happening, Jivan Mukti is explicitly affirmed. Shankaracharya's commentary says Jivanda Eva is very decisive statement. Liberation is not a postponed event after death. Who knows what is liberation if it is after death? There is nobody to come and report whether there is a liberated or not liberated. What is the state of liberation? But Upanishad and the Shastra refer about liberation, and it is one of the Purusharthas. It is a freedom here and now, Adya Iha. Knowing that it is a freedom from bondage of birth and death. Krishna in the earlier verses has mentioned, Na jayate mriyate va kadachit. The Atma, the self, is never being born or never having death. So, the birth remains empirically right, but the bondage to birth is gone. Empirically, it may appear that we have been born. But the bondage which we feel that, from the fruit of action that I have to take a birth in a rich man's family or in a noble family or in a play family where I will be having happiness. All such sorts of bondage will go. Vishnoho Paramam Padam is another word which you need to explain that. It is not a place. It is liberation itself, or that freedom, mukti or moksha. Why? Because it is anamaya, free from affliction. The only place where we can be guaranteed that there won't be any affliction is only when we are liberated ourselves. Any other place, even if it is in the heavens, as long as our good deed, the merits exhausted, we will fall back for the same thing. Even there, now the Sarga, Devendra or the Indra is supposed to be the king of the heavens. Even he has been tormented by the Asuras, and he had to run to the, Ishwaras for saving him, or he had to run to Arjuna for saving him from that, the 10 million demons who were attacking him. So you can imagine that even heaven is not a place without affliction. And therefore Shankaracharya is not reading this as a spiritual heaven, Parvishnoho Paramam Padam, but as the state of freedom itself. That is why he used the word Jivan Mukti or Moksha. That word when he used is to take out that false impression we may carry that, oh, Krishna is referring to Vishnu, the Paramam Padam. No. If you refer to the context under which Krishna is explaining these things, we can make out that he is not referring to a spatial place of heaven. So if you go to a retrospective summary of 49, 50 and 51, from Buddhi Yoga is the word it is starting. So Gita has been unfolding one by one continuous teaching. Started with Karma Yoga, which is the purifying of Sattva. And purified sattva gives rise to knowledge. Buddhi sattve jnanam. And knowledge directly destroys the punya and papa. Punya and papa is only as long as you have the enjoyership for it. The knowledge takes away the doership and enjoyership. Therefore, punya and papa are no more afflicting in nature, no more existing in the eyes of the jnani or the mukta. Therefore, the destruction of punya and papa also ends the cycle of birth and death. This is the non-duality trajectory, but not through the method in which it is being referred in the Puranas. Even though it may appear that it is in stages, that first we have to do karma yoga, then we have to purify our chitta chuddhi, then we have to attain that knowledge, and then we have to destroy the punya and papa or merit and demerit. Then that will destroy the feeling that I am the enjoyer or doer, and that freedom from bondage is taking place. It is not that way. They are all organic in nature. When one graduates us to another, we ourselves will not know or realize it. It is so smooth and simple. Only thing is that you have to start the journey. Once you take the first step, the journey has started. So, Karma Yoga is the place to start with. When the fruit of action is renounced, birth loses its claim, and when knowledge dawns, bondage has nowhere to remain, even while life continues. That is the summary of that 3 slokas, 49, 50 and 51. Now, in the 52nd verse, Yoganushtana janita sattva shuddhija buddhi kada prapsyate ityuchyate. That intellect, which is sattva shuddhija, means by the purity of sattva, how does one achieve that? Kada prapsyate. How does sattva shuddhija buddhi happen? Yoga anushtana janita. So yoga anushtana is the karma yoga which leads to sattva shuddhi, and sattva shuddhi buddhi is the place where the knowledge takes place. So this, how does one achieve that? Krishna says, 52, verse number 52. Yada te moha kalilam buddhir vyatirishyati tada gandasi nirvedam shrotasya shrutasya cha. Yada, whenever, your moha kalilam, the turbidity of delusion or illusion, or the what you call the mire of delusion, when that buddhi vyatirishyati, when the intellects surpasses, vyatirishyati means surpasses, tada, that time, nirvedam gandasi. Nirvedam means callousness. You will reach the state, or you will go to the state of callousness, not carelessness, callousness. Shrotavya shrutasya cha. Towards all that is to be heard and all that has been already heard. Now, what is this? The meaning is not very clear to a first-time reader of this verse. When your mind will go beyond the turbidity of delusion, then you will acquire dispassion or carelessness for what is to be heard and what has been heard. Now, what is this what has been heard and what has been to be heard? Let us look what Shankaracharya is decoding them as. Yada yasmin kale te tava moha kalilam moha atmakam aviveka rupam kalushyam yena atma anatma viveka bodham kalushyi kritya vishayam prati andakaranam pravartate tad tava buddhihi vyatikramishyati ati shuddha bhavam apsyate ityartha. What does it say? When at the time, then your intellect will cross beyond it or will transcend it with a state of great purity. Now, what is that when? That is referred as when you are mare of delusion, consisting of delusion, ignorance, and wrong concepts, ajnana samshaya viparya, taking the form of non-discrimination. That impurity by which the knowledge of discrimination between the self and the non-self is sullied and the inner organ is driven toward the object. That is what is called the delusion. What is delusion? It's a delusion itself, which is taking the form of non-discrimination. Viveka. What is nitya vastu viveka? That is the discrimination between the self and non-self by the antakarana. Then the antakarana, when it doesn't have this difference between the atma and anatma or self and non-self, it is in a state of confusion. This is what the adhyasa is called as, or the superimposition. The body is thought as I am the body, and all the actions of the body is saying, we are saying I am doing it. The atma is doing it. This is the different, what is called the self and non-self distinction, discrimination. And why should such a thing happen? Moha kalilam. See, the word kalilam is a beautiful word in Sanskrit to indicate the green cover on a pond. The green cover, we all know that it is algae or some vegetative matter. That vegetative matter there cannot grow unless there is turbidity in the water. The roots of this algae lives on the turbidity for their own existence. That is why you will find certain lakes are crystal clear, whereas certain lakes or ponds are covered with this green algae. Why is that one side the lake is clean and we can see the bottom and the other place you can't see that? It is not because the water is moving. That you don't have to say it is not a lake then. It is a place where there is perpetual movement taking place. It is because the turbidity is not there in the water. Invariably, at the bottom of these lakes where the clear water is there will be either rocks or pebbles which are not allowing any turbidity to happen. Whereas in the other lake, it is invariably the clay, settled by the wind which brings in the dust from the surroundings. So that this green algae lives upon the dust and then they cover the water. You can't see the clarity of the water. Even though the water is the same in both the lakes. Therefore, the word Kalilam, when we say that, is the one which, with the turbidity and that mire of the, that formation of the green cover on the water, which makes us not see the water at all. So the thicker the coating, the thicker is the delusion. That is the example which is here. And what is the nature of that in the mind or in the antakarana? Aviveka rupam kalushyam. Kalilam kalushyam is the condition of having turbidity. Yena atma anatma viveka bodham kalushikritya vishayam pradi antakaranam pravartate. Because of which, losing the potency to differentiate between the self and the non-self, that viveka bodham, kalushikritya, it is confused or deluded. Vishayam pradi antakaranam pravartate. The antakaranam is seeing, or the inner organ is seeing the objects as separate, independent, existing entities with qualifications and adjectives. It is not able to see the substratum of Satchit, existence and consciousness, on which the names and forms are being formed. That inability to differentiate the objects are nothing but existence awareness. A having name and form is not a problem. But when we know the object, we should know the reality of the object. Just like that reality of an ornament is gold, or reality of a wave is water. We should know the reality of the empirical world is consciousness, Sat and Chit. When that discrimination is not possible, that is called the Aviveka Rupam, Moha Atmagam. That is from the delusion. Tat Tava Buddhi Vyatirishati. That takes away your intelligence into wrong routes. Vyatirishyati means it diverts your attention to the names and forms. Vyatikramishyati. Atishuddha bhavam with apsyate. When you are able to understand this, that this is the reason behind my seeing the empirical world as separate from me, that is the time when it will attain a state of great purity. That buddhi yogam will take place only that. Tata tasmin kale gandasi prapsyasi nirvedam vairagyam shrotasya shrutasya cha. Tada shrotavyam shrutam cha nishpalam pratibhadi iti abhiprayaha. Tada tasmin kale. At that time, when you are attained the state of great purity, you will attain disenchantment. Tasmin kale gandasi prapsyasi nirvedam. Disenchantment. We heard this word nirvedam before. Parishya lokan karmajidan brahmana nirvedamayat. So, disenchantment or dispassion, vairagyam. About what? Shrotavya shrutasya cha. with regard to both what is yet to be heard and what is been heard. I am not explaining it here now because Shankaracharya is explaining later very, very clearly. That what is to be heard and what has been heard will appear to us as fruitless. Nishphalam pradivadi. This is the meaning. So how does Shankara interpret the Shrotavya Shrutasya cha? He says that a striking claim follows that both is yet to be heard and already heard. What does it appears Nishphala? He's not saying that normally Shruti when means scripture. Shrotavya means the scripture what you need to be hearing. And Shrutam means the Shruti which you have studied. So Shankara does not mean that the scripture is false or the teaching is useless. He means that the purpose of the instruction is fulfilled, that's all. There is nothing which is remained to be heard. Yat shrutva sarvamidam vijnadam bhavate. Mundagopanishad, if you remember it. Yat jnatva sarvamidam vijnadam bhavate. That is what is indicated here. Nishphala shrotavya shrutasya cha. Just as a medicine loses relevance once health is restored, scripture loses instrumental necessity once the knowledge is firm with the buddhi yoga. From the buddhi yoga, when the knowledge is achieved, this state marks the end of seeking and end of all sorts of accumulation which we have been doing in our life. And it will also terminate or end our dependence on instructions from the teacher or the Shastra. That is complete freedom. Freedom from seeking, freedom from accumulation, freedom from the do's and don'ts of the Shastra. Not because it has failed, but because it has succeeded completely. The delusion is a cognitive impurity that drives the mind outward. But when the discrimination matures, the intellect begins to transcend this impurity. This results in deep dispassion and disenchantment. It also reduces the interest in further instructions either from the teacher or the Shruti. It naturally falls away. Yatra Veda Veda Bhavati. Therefore, the scripture will appear fruitless because its purpose is fulfilled. What is the scripture for? It is to attain knowledge. Once you have attained knowledge, what has the scripture to do? That is why he gave the example of once health has been recovered, what can the medicines be of any use? This marks the readiness of unwavering abidance in knowledge. So, when the mind is pure, nothing more is need to be heard, not because the truth is absent, but because it is fully present. And the next sloka is Moha Kalila Atyaya Dwarena Labda Atma vivekaja prajna kada karmayogajam phalam paramartha yogam avapsyam iti chet tat shrunu. Moha kalila atyayadvarena labda means by discarding or removing the moha kalilam or the delusion due to the desires. Labda means achieved, whatever has been achieved when you do that. What do you get? Atma vivekaja prajna. Prajna, you get the prajna or that knowledge, which is Atma vivekaja, which gives birth to the knowledge of Atma. Kada karma yogajam phalam paramartha yogam avapsyam iti chet. When do this karma yogajam phalam, when we do karma yoga, there also we get phala. That paramartha yogam means take us towards the paramartha or the reality. Avapsyati means attain. Iti chet tat shrunu. Listen to that. The verse number 53. Shruti vipratipannaha te yada styasyati nischala samadau achala buddhihi tada yogam avapsyasi. Shrutihi means the Vedic descriptions or the instructions. Vipratipanna, without being influenced by the fruits of the results or the fruits of actions, or the instructions in the Veda where the fruits of yajna, karma has been mentioned. Te, your yada tyasyasi, when remains nischala, unmoved, samadhau, in equipoised intellect, achala, unflinching, buddhihi, intelligence, tada, that time, yogam avapsyasi. Here the yogam means the knowledge or the knowledge of the self or self-realization. Avapsyasi means you will achieve. So what does it say? When your intellect, which gets perplexed by the words of Veda, which you had read and which you are expecting to learn, shall stand immovable and steady in the equanimity of the knowledge which you have attained, then you shall attain self-realization. Slightly complicated, but not for Shankara. He is decoding it for our easy understanding. Shruti viprati panna aneka sadhya sadhana sambandha prakashana shrutibihi. Shruti means aneka, multiple. Sadhya sadhana sambandha, statements that reveal diverse relation between ends and means and ends. Sadhya and sadhana, sambandha, their relationship. Prakashana shrutibihi means that the scriptures what reveal that. In other words, shravanaihi means shravana, what we hear from the shruti. In other words, pravritti nivritti lakshanaihi. The statements are characterized by injections, do's and don'ts, or towards action and withdrawal. what should be done, what should not be done. Thus, having become conflicted, holding many views and scattered, vipratipanna, nana pratipanna, vikshipta sati. That means it is holding many views. That is the biggest problem on the Vedas. What is being told, what is not being told, ordinary mind cannot decode it. Only when you are taught in a tradition and they decode it and tell us, even though we are experts in Sanskrit, we will not be able to connect between the various places the references are being placed. Therefore, it is conflicting and confusing for an ordinary mind, because it is scattered in different parts of the Vedas. And when we read it, we will get confused. Vikshita sati. That is our current state. Te tava buddhi yadi yasmin kale tyasyasi sthiri bhutva bhavishyati. But when your intellect becomes the previous verse which I said, achala, unwavering. Stasyasi means abiding firm on that. Sthiri bhutva means, sthira means affirmed. Bhavishyati, nischala, unwavering. Vikshepa chalana varjita. Vikshepa means imagination and projections. Vikshepa chalana. Vikshepa is projection. Chalana is movement. Varjita means devoid of that sati. When it happens, samadhau. When it happens in samadhi. What is the meaning of samadhau? Samadhiyate chittam asmin iti samadhau. That is what is samadhi. The settling of the mind, that in which the mind is gathered and settled, is called samadhi. Atma. In another word, samadhi is equal to Atma. That is the self itself. In that self, tasmin atmani ityetat. Achala tatra api vikalpa varjita ityetat. In that self, remaining unmoving, free even from the conceptual alternatives. That is the vikshepa chalana. Free from that. Buddhihi means antakarana. Tada tasmin kale yogam avapsyasi. Viveka prajnam samadhim prapsyasi. Buddhi here means here the antakarana. It is not the intellect which we are talking about, the full total mano buddhi ahankara chitta. At that time, antakaranam. Tasmin kale, mean that time, yogam avapsyasi. You will attain yoga. That is the perfect yoga or samadhi. Viveka prajna, established in the discriminative wisdom. You will attain samadhi. Samadhim prapsyati. Shruti viprapatipanna. How scripture can confuse? Shankara does not accuse Veda of contradiction. He diagnoses that listener's state of mind. The Veda teaches many ends and many means, like heaven, prosperity, withdrawal, knowledge, do's and don'ts, etc. Many things are being taught by the Vedas. When heard without Adhikari Veda, if we don't have the fitness-based distinction to understand, then the intellect becomes Vipratipanna. That is the time called Vipratipanna, means conflicted. Shruti Vipratipanna means when we are not an Adhikari or when we are not a fitness ready to read the many ends and means and the diversity and the methods which is being mentioned in the Veda, we are conflicted. Nana Pratipanna means holding many positions. Vikshipta means scattered or projected. Thus confusion is pedagogical misalignment and not a scriptural defect. Tirata or the stability is the turning point for all this. What does it mean? Liberation does not begin with the new content, but with the cessation of oscillation of the mind or the antakarana. When mind becomes steady and focused and discrimination helping to do the oscillation vanish. Stiri Bhutva, intellect stands firm. Nischala, unmoving. Vikshepa Chalana Varjita means free from distractions. This marks the end of being driven by various scriptural prompts apparently competing with each other statements. We get confused as to what is to be done and what is not to be done. Therefore, Shrutasya cha, what we discussed earlier, becomes of no use because what is the intent of the Shruti is to achieve the knowledge. So Krishna says that you can achieve that same state by Karma Yoga. By Karma you can't, but Karma Yoga you can. What Veda is telling is taken, if you take it as a karmas required to be done with the desires for Swarga, so heaven, the progeny, the wealth, etc., then you are doing the karma as instructed by the Shruti. But you are not getting into a state of knowledge because your discriminative intellect is not being developed by you. We are all going blindly driven by andasya niyamana yadhanta. The blind leading another blind. So if the instruction to you is to get entangled in the karma, you should understand that it is a blind man who is leading you. But if he is saying that it has to be performed as a karma yoga, that is the beginning where you are embarking on the journey towards Buddhi Yoga, which will culminate in the Samadhi or the Atma itself. So Shankara defines Samadhi as not as a trance, but as a settled abidance in the self. That in which the mind is gathered is what is the self. And from that, the mind doesn't want to go out. Mind doesn't want to go into Vikshepa, Vikalpa, etc. The projections or delusions. In that self, the intellect abides without conceptual alternatives or Vikalpa. Therefore, Samadhi is a non-conceptual steadiness in the self, and it is not a technique of sitting in Padmasana and looking at your nose tip or concentrating on your breath, etc. Those samadhis are Patanjali Yoga Samadhis. For taking a state that is also not unwanted, but if one is not even getting a steadiness of the mind to even do a karma yoga, then he has to start from there. The karma yoga is for the people who have got steadiness and that develop interest to develop discriminative intellect. But if you don't have the steadiness of the mind itself, then you have to start with the Kriya Yoga or Karma Yoga, which is the basic physical training. And a clarification which Shankara makes in this particular verse is the buddhi as antakarana. That buddhi here is the inner instrument. When purified and steady, it reflects the knowledge without distortion, like a mirror. It does not produce self. It ceases to obscure the self. The buddhi ceases to obscure like the water can reflect your face when it is not having the waves on up. Or that lake which has got the clarity can show the depth of the lake from when you look into it. It is not turbid and colluded with the dirt on the top. This will lead, that state of abiding in the self itself is what is called the yoga. So the yoga finally means that viveka prajna or samadhi. It is not an action, posture or breath. It is the discriminative wisdom stabilized in the self. Therefore, scriptural multiplicity can scatter an unprepared mind. Confusion arises from hearing many methods and means and ends, and if one doesn't have the discrimination. And such an intellect becomes, if confused and confounded. But when the intellect becomes steady and distraction free, the same intellect, there are no two intellects for us. So there are no two inner organ for us. There is only one inner organ for all of us. That abides non-conceptually in the self. It is not a concept. Please understand that. The self is not a concept. That is what you are. And when you are abiding in you, samadhi arises as a settled discriminative wisdom. That is a wisdom which discriminates our earlier confusions when it is all settling. That needs this intellect which is able to settle and make us abide in ourselves. And this state itself is called the yoga. So finally, when the intellect stops running between scriptural options and stands still in the self, yoga is achieved, and it is not a practice to be done. Next verse is the verse which Arjuna starts asking about the Sthita Prajna, which we will take it tomorrow's class. And from the verse after that, till the end of the second chapter, the verse number 72, that is from 55 to 72, is description of Sthita Prajna. A person who has achieved this yoga which Krishna has been talking till now. what does a person of that nature will look like, behave like, talk like? That means a person who, whether he has achieved the knowledge or stability, if all these verses can be applied to one person, not one verse, all the verses should be equally applicable to that person. Only that person is an established person who has achieved the yoga here and now. We will see it tomorrow's class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you. Dhanyawada.
Thank you very much, Mindoji. I've opened the chat and the hand raising. I think Jesse had raised the hand just before the session. So Jesse, you're welcome to come up. I think the person who came up just left. Okay. All right. Session is open for Q&A. So thank you very much, Mindoji, again for the deep manana on how to abide in the self. Thank you. Any questions, please come up.
Okay. Rahul has something. Namaste, Rahul.
Namaste, Binduji. Binduji, like my question is, like abiding in the self, right? I mean, obviously I have not reached that state, but sometimes like I get to some kind of calmness state. But the problem is, while at work, let's say I'm calm and focused for 1 or 2 hours, and then automatically, so after that, some issue happens, and then you go out of that state, and all kind of stress comes, like. So how to do it practically at work, like, maintain that calmness state without losing, that calmness? Any practical suggestions you have?
Have you been coming regularly for this sessions, or have you been listening to that
No,
replays?
because I'm off Clubhouse, and I rejoined today. So not now.
Okay. Because then you have missed that the instructions were given by Krishna in the previous verses. So I will recommend you to listen to the replays or go to YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcast and listen to the postings which I have done. Because the whole methodology of Karma Yoga, how Karma Yoga develops into Buddhi Yoga, and Buddhi Yoga, when it is established, you will achieve the abidance in the self and the peace as not as something which has been achieved, but as your own nature. When you realize that, there is no losing of that, because you can never lose yourself. That is what the verses are there. And how does a person who has achieved that is the remaining verses from 55 to 72 of Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 is talking about. So if you can catch up that and come on Friday for our questions, especially on the Gita. All questions are for Gita talk on the Friday. So if you can come, it's a question answer session only, no class is there. So I can answer you. And if still something is remaining for understanding.
Sure. Thanks, Binduji. Yeah.
Thank you, Rahul.
That.
Namaste, Venkat.
This is a very good session today.
Thank you.
Sort of culminates everything. Yoga and now Gnana culminated very well. Thank you for this. Just a closure on this. That Viveka Prajna Samadhi, right? That natural abidance due to the intellect now. that vikshepa of intellect is no more, that dispersion is no more. Natural abidance is what has been talked about by Shankara Bhashya.
Right.
At the same breath, if you look at Asparsha Yoga in Mandukya Karika, right? That takes a little different direction. Asparsha means no touching, right? Here it is natural abidance. There it was a little different. Is this both gurus are deviating or here Shankara really culminating very well?
That is exactly what Shankara said. Shrotasya cha shrutasya cha. Shrotavya cha shrutasya cha. When he said that is that when we listen to that different methods, we will get naturally confused about which one is right, what is right, or are they same or are they different? All these thoughts can come to our mind. Asparsha Yoga is talking the same language, but the terminologies are different, that's all. There, Asparsha has been talked as a different aspect of it. That is, the self is untouched by anything. That is what here also Krishna will say later. But here he is not going to that aspect of the yoga of the abidance in the self from the Asparsha Yoga method. But here he is taking us through the Karma Yoga to Buddhi Yoga and Buddhi Yoga to Samadhi or Yoga. That is the methodology used here. But the end result is the same in both the cases. Where Mandukya Karika talks about the straight away from the personal experience of Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti. This Atma Anatma Viveka, which is achieved through Karma Yoga and Buddhi Yoga, or the different discriminative self and non-self discrimination what we learn in the process of Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga here, is the same thing what we will achieve when we are going beyond the three states of awareness of Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti of the Asparsha Yoga also. Both are not two different things, but approach is different from that. Here, while living, while being active in the world, you can achieve it. There, it is talking straight away from your Samadhi state onwards.
I think the whole background I'm having is I took this hard path of Hatha Yoga last 9 months, and I definitely left that the tasting of Samadhi is pretty natural in this path. Samadhi is sort of forced, conscious state because of the practices. And as you come out of that setup into regular life, you lose it. Again, you practice again to get there. That is the nature of that forced Samadhi, right? And to avoid it, I think the Gnana is the only way out, where you understand the nature of dwelling in various aspects of life. Now you figure it out that where the dispersion is happening, and once that understanding is there, the samatva is the result. Hence, that wavering mind naturally go away. That's that Viveka Prajna Samadhi is nicely laid out here. There is the intermediate setup where that asparsha, where you try to avoid the situation, avoid that wavering situation purposefully. You never understood why you are avoiding, just simply avoid those situations. Like a turtle pulling back its legs into the shell, right? That avoidance also gets you to the samadhi. But that avoidance is inevitable. The inevitably get involved at times, then again it is lost. So that is from a practitioner, I'm viewing this at this time. That's all, Vinodji.
I can understand, Venkat. One thing we should understand that na karmana na prajaya dhanena tyage neke amritattva manashuhu. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna will tell that. Na karmana, not by action. Na prajaya, by getting progeny. Na dhanena, not by wealth. Tyage neke, by, renunciation alone, you will achieve amritattva, with immortality or this everlasting peace. Why does he say that way? Because anything what is in time has an end in time. Only eternity is everlasting. Rahul asked the same question. You asking it in a different way, that's all. Any karma-based activity, samadhi, yoga, hatha yoga, all of them there is a beginning to it. And then, what you achieve in that, since it is in the time-bound method, the effort need to be maintained. As long as that effort is lost, as long as the effort is there, you may feel you have achieved something. But that effort is a space and time effect. It will have the effect when the moment the effort is lost, you are back to square one. But whereas in the karma yoga, even though it is in this time bound thing, there you are not beginning something new. What you are doing is doing it in a different way, where you are not looking for achieving something. You are bringing an equanimity of approach towards the results of action. That verse which when we explained, we told that. So when you reach that mental state, that is the time when you really realize that as long as I don't hold on to my desires, whatever comes, I am not running away from them, or I am rejecting it. But I don't have a desire to aggrandize or accumulate there and protect it. It will come, it will go, it may not come, it may not. That's all. That Nisanga Bhava will come. And when the Nisanga Bhava, or that dispassionate approach towards the fruits of action, the action itself becoming a self-consuming one. Thereby the activity itself will come to a lower level, reducing. And when the activity reduces, that is the time when your intellect becomes more and more appreciative of the nature of the self and non-self. And that will lead us towards the Buddhi Yoga and then culmination in the Yoga of Yoga Samadhi. That is the method in which Krishna is teaching us.
Yes, Vinodji, I get it now. That Moha Kalila was the very great word.
Yes, beautiful word that is.
Yeah, that it's really indicating the antakarana, that subconscious mind.
Yes.
Carrying, all the baggage. I think each person's baggage is different based on our own conditioning. So that was a bigger deal. So I think buddhi is a discriminative faculty, but antakarana is at an overall level has to become clean to
Yes.
reduce wavering. This is a great way to sort of navigate here. Thank you, Vinodji.
Thank you, Venkat. Namaste, Mahadev. After a long time.
Namaste, Vendoji.
Namaste.
Sorry, I was far from the phone. Very nice classes. I just came up to say hello and asking your
That's what I
health.
said. After a long time, I am able to interact with you. Thank you so much. Tell me. Oh, thank you so much, Madhir. Thank you so much. Yeah. It's allowed. Anytime.
You're doing well
Thank you, Madhir.
with the health?
I'm doing better, Madhir. Now
Yeah, you
I'm much
sound
better.
better, so that's good news.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you so
Thank
much. Okay, Prakash. We'll
Sure,
continue
Vindhuji.
tomorrow.
Yes.
Ita
Thank
Pratnisya Ka Bhasha. We'll start that tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thanks everyone for coming and participating as usual. We have a full house, all people coming and supporting this. And that justifies Bindoji's ardent and very sincere, approach to this whole framework of teaching Advaita through Bhagavad Gita. So thank you very much, Bindoji. So tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. we'll reconvene for class number 29. Have a great evening, everyone. And over to you, Bindoji, to close the room.
Thank you, Prakash, Venkat, Madhir, and Rahul. See you all tomorrow, same time. Very on. Good night.
Good night, Balaji.
Good night.